and welcome to Main Street Matters by Heart on Main Street, the podcast that knows that when you help retail rebuild, you help the entire community recover. Last week, as I have mentioned, Heart on Main Street went down to Asheville, North Carolina. This week, in this episode, I want to talk about what we did and how this had an impact on really the future of our organization and what we're going to be focusing on as a group in order to help communities and retailers recover. We will absolutely be continuing our education and having monthly webinars covering topics that retailers need to know. But we also want to show up for retailers in different ways, to be there for them when their community is in dire straits, and be able to help them repair their buildings, help them recover in ways that really just giving out financial grants can't do. We want to be there in a more impactful way. So before I tell the story of what we did in Asheville, I do want to give out a couple thank yous, because there were a lot of people that were involved in this project, in this rebuild efforts, and they need to be called out for what they've done in order to help our organization, help the town of Asheville, and help in particular Dogwood Darlings. Lowe's Home Improvement seriously gave us thousands of dollars worth of products. They let us on Monday when we arrived go on a shopping spree and work with our retailer to buy so many things that we needed in order to make sure that we had things to help repair their building and get it back closer to opening up. And they really just gave us kind of a carte blanche to go and find things that we needed in order to help this store. So I seriously cannot be more appreciative of the work that they did and the generosity of Lowe's Home Improvement. We had multiple donors for this week as well. The Link Companies has raised so much money for our organization this year. We've made multiple grants on behalf of the Link Companies. We were able to do 3 grants to 3 different retailers while we were in Asheville based on the money that they have donated. Also, Mud Pie, Goose Waddle, and London Bridge by Maison Chic were able to donate coupon codes for products for our retailer Dogwood Darlings, so that when she does open up or when she's close to reopening up, she can cash in these coupon codes. She can get free product into her store. You have no idea how impactful that is. We're talking over $8,000 of free product that she gets to bring into her store from these vendors. That is, she could turn around and sell that for, at a minimum, $16,000, maybe close to $18,000. That's just free coming into her store for her to rebuild and jumpstart her business. And then we had volunteers from so many different groups. Really, this was an wholesale industry effort coming together. We brought down 17 people to help with this store. We had volunteers from IG Design Group Americas. We had volunteers from One Coast, volunteers from the Link Companies, volunteers for Butler Sales Group. And of course, we, from Heart on Main Street, brought our own people as well. And that leads me into my last thank you before we dive into really telling the story of what we did in Asheville. But I do want to give a very, very special thanks to my marketing and operations director, Melissa Hopkins. She very intentionally has been behind the scenes of this entire organization since April of 2023. And while she doesn't like to be on camera, and she probably doesn't like that I'm calling her out in talking about what a fantastic job that she did, because I know she listens to at least the very beginning to make sure that we get a listen for this episode. But she has done so many incredible things for our organization, and this entire rebuild was hers. I handed it over. We had talked about wanting to do this, and I'm a person that wants everything to kind of be in place. I want us to be ready to be able to take something on like this. And she said, no, we're never going to necessarily be ready. We just have to do it. So this entire work, the entire effort that was done by Melissa, and she took it on and she killed it. everything that we organized, every partnership that we made, all the volunteers, every bit of organization that was done, and everything that we were able to do in Asheville was because of Melissa. She did such a fantastic job, and truly this entire thing could not have happened without her. So kudos to Melissa, kudos to our donors, to our volunteers, and again, a special thanks to Lowe's Home Improvement, because that was so amazing, the generosity that they gave for us to be able to pull off this project. So what did we do while in Asheville? So first, I want to kind of scale back to September 27th of 2024. That is really the day where everything went down. Leading up to that day, in fact, there were really storms going on in the Asheville area. There was a lot of rain. Really, the water table was kind of at a peak already. And then Hurricane Helene came. And normally, as a hurricane comes, and Asheville, while in the mountains, doesn't seem to really be a hurricane destination, they have seen hurricanes in the past. Many of the stores that we talked to said that they have seen water come into their stores from hurricanes, that it's normally a couple inches to a foot at the most that has occurred. Well, again, because of everything that led up, because there was already a lot of rain before Hurricane Helene came, and then the massive storm hit. Most people that I talked to really didn't even expect the storm to come to Asheville. The way that it was projected to come was to go through the Gulf and veer more towards Atlanta. However, it did come straight up through and almost at an incredible speed. Generally, when a hurricane goes over land, it slows down and the storm dissipates. But this came at such a speed that really didn't even have time to do that, and it hit Asheville in western North Carolina at full force and then kind of sat there as it dissipated. So because of all of the rain that went on ahead of time, and because of this hurricane coming in, the destruction was really devastating. I'm sure you remember watching on television, seeing the massive flooding that came through and people talking that Asheville is gone. Well, I assure you that it is not gone. It is definitely still there. The town is thriving. A lot of parts of the area were not touched, but some areas were incredibly devastated. The River Arts District, where really sat along the river, that area was almost completely wiped away. We worked with a store called Second Gear that had just opened up a few years ago, a brand new location right on the river. They focus on consignment products for outdoor gear, for looking at kayaks and river equipment. And so it's a perfect location to be right on the river. And again, they expected to have a lot of storm. They expected to have water come into their store. They put up sandbags. In the past, they had gotten about a foot there in previous storms, so they expected something similar to that. Well, they got a whole lot more. The river flooded up to their roof and flooded everything inside. They had a 10,000 square foot space that, was affected a lot by the river, but then the debris came down and crushed through the building, washing everything away. Their inventory just completely gone. Even their cement cash wrap area was just picked up and washed downriver, which is unfathomable to think about. And I've used that term so many times when talking about Asheville. It is unfathomable unless you are there, unless you're looking at the destruction. And even then, it's hard to imagine, hard to believe everything that went on. Second Gear did tell really an incredible story. Quite a few years ago, they've been in business over a decade, and at a different location, someone had placed a little resin angel outside of their store, and they lived in an area that also had residential, so they thought maybe it belonged to one of the residents of the building that they lived above. So they put it on one of the mailboxes and left it there for a little bit. It was right around Christmas time, believing that someone would realize they had left it outside and would come and grab it, but they didn't. So this little angel became almost a good luck totem of the store. They would bring it inside, they had it on display, they had it near their cash wrap. And the owner, as we were talking to him, said that it was the loss of this and the realization that they had lost this angel. They had lost their inventory, they had lost their store, they had lost all of these things in it. But when we thought back on this angel, this little 6-inch tall totem that they would have in their store, that's when everything hit home. That's when he cried for the first time and understood and felt the loss. The store was replaceable, the things were replaceable, but for some reason this little item was the thing that really hit home for him and broke him. In their cleanup, they went through and they were clearing out the mud. They were seeing the destruction of everything. They were going through with insurance adjusters and appraising what was salvageable and what was not. It was basically a complete loss. And in that, as they were looking through everything, one of his workers called out, "I found it. I found it." Like, what did you find? "I found the angel." And there, under the debris, covered in mud, caked in inches of mud, he showed us pictures, was their little angel. Completely untouched, completely pristine, after you washed off the mud. And it now resides in their new store, in a glass case, and is truly a symbol of resurgence and good luck for the store. In working with Second Gear, we were able to provide them with a grant for $5,000. They have reopened a new store. Really, they turned around and they found a new location very, very quickly and worked with their ownership group to secure a new space. Because of their business model being a lot of consignment, people were readily willing to donate their clothes, donate their products so they could come back in business. And they understood that, I might not be paid on this, and it's actually more important for the store to have the money than for me to get paid on the issues that I have offered to consignment. So Second Gear was able to rebound. They were able to be back in business after just a few months out of operation. Another store that we worked with was called Diamond Brand Outdoors. Diamond Brand Outdoors as a brand has been around for over 100 years. Again, focusing on outdoor clothing and outdoor gear. They had their own brand. They had their own stores. They were a thriving century-old business. During the flooding, their warehouse was completely wiped out. All of their inventory gone. We worked with the store owner who was in their Main Street area, and the Main Street really was less affected by everything. But he talked about, we had this thriving business, and now the store is all that's left. There is no brand to Diamond Brand Outdoor anymore. It's really just the store. And they have lots of other brands in there. It's a regular retail store that focuses on things that are about Asheville and being outdoors and an appreciation for nature and an appreciation for everything that it provides. But Diamond Brand is gone. Their inventory, everything that they had worked over a century building, was gone within one day. Again, we made a donation, a financial grant to help their business. They experienced a lot of loss. They had to furlough their employees. And so helping get back and helping them expand their business. They're never going to be a brand in themselves anymore, but that retail store is the legacy of a century-old business in helping them remain in the downtown area, helping them stay an important part of their community. We saw as an incredibly necessary thing to do. And then the last retailer that we worked with, and really where we spent a large majority of our week, was called Dogwood Darlings. And Dogwood Darlings is a retail store, a children's boutique store that is in the Biltmore Village area of Asheville. And if you are familiar with Asheville, I'm sure you know this, but if you are not, Biltmore Village is connected or nearby the Biltmore estate, the Vanderbilt's home, a gorgeous palatial estate within Asheville. Because it is so large, there's actually the need to develop housing nearby the estate for the workers. So they built the Biltmore Village of different houses. And over the years, there is less need for a large staff to be working there. So these houses have turned into commercial properties, and retail and restaurants have moved in. And it's really a wonderful area. Very historic homes. Everything kind of retains that charm of the historic era. Dogwood Darlings was one of these stores in the historic Biltmore Village. The owner, Kelly, opened her store in March of 2020. And if that time rings any bells in your mind, it was a very difficult time for independent retail. She was open about a week before everything closed down because of COVID. And she survived that. She pivoted, she changed her business model in completely unexpected ways than what she had thought of a month prior. And she survived through this period. She thrived during the period. She opened up her business again. Retail was coming back into the area. She was growing as a business until September 27th, when the Shenandoah River, which was already at high levels, was inundated with even more water from the hurricane, and the water level rose. Now, when you're standing in front of Dogwood Darlings, you cannot see the river. It's not like it's right behind. It's relatively close by, maybe 200, 300 yards away. But the river rose, and it rose up and over the banks. It flowed over those banks and into the streets. It not only flowed into the streets, but it rose about 15 feet off the street level. And the store, which is sitting up a little high, maybe 4 or 5 feet over the street, was flooded. The whole first floor was submerged in floodwater. Now, Kelly and her husband Lee knew that there might be flooding, and they knew that there might be some damage to the store, which was incredibly perceptive. So the night before, they had taken all of their inventory on the first floor and brought it up to the second floor. Remember, it's a house, so it has a first floor and a second floor. And this was an incredibly wise move of theirs, because while that first floor was, the second floor remained dry. So their products were safe. Kelly very quickly turned around, said, "What can I do with this inventory?" And she found a space to rent in Greenville, South Carolina, which is about an hour and a half away, and found a new store where she could open up there and begin to sell her product and begin to continue her business. Because she knew that, well, this is a flood, and it's different than other types of storms. I've talked about this in the past, but hurricanes and damage from hurricanes is often by insurance classified as floods. And many retail businesses in Asheville do not carry flood insurance. It is prohibitively expensive and sort of kind of unnecessary for the most part, except in a case like this. And so she knew, and they went back and forth with insurance companies and lawyers, but they really ultimately knew that they were not getting any insurance money from this, that everything would have to be rebuilt on their own dime. If they're wanting to come back, it's going to be their own effort that is put into this. So they needed to have that business in order to supplement the repair and rebuild of the business in Asheville. So when I talk about her being a smart and savvy business owner, this is what I mean. She has already in 5 years experienced so much and has overcome so much in order to make sure her business works. So we arrived with our group on Tuesday. And Tuesday we looked at the building. You could still see mud caking the outside. We looked at what had been a little front yard of the house, and there was still 3 to 4 inches of river mud just coating the entire front yard. As we eventually cleaned and landscaped this area, we found paving stones buried underneath this mud and muck that was not visible at all when we started. In fact, the mud extended onto the sidewalk several inches. Again, just this remnant of almost a year later, everything that had happened during this time. When we arrived on site, Kelly pointed to a piece of trim about halfway up the house that acted as the water line for the flood. Below this line, the stucco was coated with mud and dirt, turning its bright, vibrant white into a pale brown beige color. The green trim around the building was chipped and peeling in many places, and the green was faded. Above the line was relatively okay. So you could see this stark contrast between the first floor and the second floor, the area that was submerged in water and the area that was spared. Inside, the whole first floor had been gutted. It had been torn down to the studs. You could see the beautiful hardwood floors of this building that were still coated with mud and dirt from the flood. Kelly is still waiting on her permit to begin the rebuild and reconstruction of the inside. Again, we're approaching almost a year later, but she's being held up by multiple different things. Originally, she did not own the building. She has since bought the building and is able to begin that permit process after she bought the building. But then there's a lot of historical preservation metrics that she needs to meet and needs to make sure that they're abiding by in order to get permits to continue to rebuild there. Inside, a lot of our work was focused on the second floor. Yes, the second floor was spared from the flooding. It did not see the water level rise that high. However, in order to get all of the inventory that she had moved up there, they did have to wade through the mud and bring that upstairs on their shoes and on their clothes in order to get it, to bring it down, to take it to this new location. So while there wasn't destruction to the second floor, there was a lot of damage that was done. And there we focused on really repairing walls that had been damaged as they moved 2 floors worth of inventory into 1 floor's worth of space. We also mopped and cleaned the floors and the walls to make sure that they were back to a pristine shape again. And then we painted everything, put a fresh coat of paint, taking away the memories of the disaster that had happened. The before and after pictures are truly remarkable. You look at them and say, is that the same room? Is that the same space? How can it be? It looks so much fresher and brighter now that this group has come in. And the group that worked on the inside truly did an amazing job. Because there was no permit for rebuilding, that meant that there was also no running water in the building. There was no air conditioning or electricity in the building. So they were working in an Asheville summer heat, which is hot, it is muggy, and yet they never complained. They continued to persevere on. We didn't have access to air conditioning or bathrooms, but we continued to work and continued to know that everything that we did was for the betterment of this building, for the betterment of this retailer, to make sure that everything was up to her standards and allowing her to relive her dream again. I spent most of the 3 days working on the outside of the building, where we first tackled some of the landscaping and the mud that surrounded the building, and taking away wheelbarrow after wheelbarrow of mud and dirt and plants that had grown in this area, and getting it back to a fresh shape. Then we went through and washed the stucco and washed the walls. We chipped away the old paint and took it back to its wood so that we could put a fresh new coat of paint on. At the end of 3 days, we had painted the whole first floor again. We had landscaped. There were then bushes and flowers and things that brought a liveliness back to the life of the building. We trimmed back trees, we cut down overgrowth, and by the end of our 3 days there, the building looked immaculate. You couldn't tell that a year ago, the entire space had been flooded, had been covered by filth, because today it looks great. With each paint scraping, with each bucket of mop water that turned brown, we took back the agency of this home. We brought it back to what it was supposed to look like. We helped repair and renew this building in order for it to reopen in the fall. For our volunteers, this was a transformative experience. Seeing what had happened to Asheville and being a part of its rebirth and regrowth was important and impactful for them. But just as important is the impact that it had on the retail owner, Kelly. And I want you to hear it from her words. I know Asheville has really responded as a community. I even see it in your window, Asheville Strong.
Yeah.
Tell us what that community support has been for you and in this area and the city of Asheville.
Yeah, no, I mean, my customers that are local here have all been super supportive to me. You know, even though I'm an hour and a half away, you know, they're still shopping online and calling,
Yeah.
and we do a lot of home deliveries up here, and just, I mean, this whole like Biltmore Village community has been great and very supportive.
Heart of Main Street, we are here to help get Dogwood Darlings and help get towards this state of reopening, as well as provide some product for you for when you do reopen. What does that mean for your business? How is that going to help?
You know, I applied for, you know, we're told just apply for grants, apply for everything. I did. You guys, Melissa and I were laughing because I got the letter and it was like, no, you guys didn't get the grant, but we are coming. And I didn't really know what that meant. You're gonna have to stop again. You make me cry.
Seriously.
I know.
All I want to do is hug you. Oh, it's okay. That's what we're here. That's what we're here for. I told you this whole time. It's all about you and getting your store back up and running. Yeah. Okay. I think we've sort of been, you know, hashing it out along the way. But oh my gosh, this is amazing. Everything that you guys, you know, I didn't know any of these people before this week, and they didn't have to come, but they did, and it's been great. This really helps us a lot, and that you chose us and believed in us, because sometimes I don't.
Should believe yourself.
It's hard, you know. The last year's been really hard, and sometimes it's hard to keep going. But you guys being here just gives us a huge push to get back.
Well, we're happy to do so. And again, this has been great getting you up and going again. So,
Yeah.
again, I can't wait to see you all reopen and
Thank
see
you.
what it looks like.
Thank you.
And I'm so looking forward to
you.
coming to visit.
Yeah, thank you.
You can tell from Kelly's voice just how emotional this was, but a long journey it has been to get back to some semblance of normalcy. And that's what Heart on Main Street's here to do, to help retailers and help communities feel normal again after a terrible, terrible tragedy has occurred. This was our very first rebuild effort, and if you can't tell from how I talk about it, we're absolutely doing this again, and I see this as really the future of the organization, to go and be a part of these communities, to give back in ways that are more than just monetary, but are truly making an impact on these stores, to be there in ways that are more than just financial, but in support as well. We're already mapping out our next indie rebuild and looking at different areas of the country that have been affected, like Kerr County in Texas, which experienced massive flooding, and returning to Asheville, because while we helped one store, there's still a lot of work to be done. So until next time, stay safe, shop local, and keep your heart on Main Street. This episode was written, produced, researched, and edited by me, Patrick Keiser, with a very special thanks to everyone that contributed towards our indie rebuild project. To learn more about Heart on Main Street, you can visit www.heartonmainstreet.org, and you can email us at contact@heartonmainstreet.org. Thanks. Bye.